There are seasons in life when we just don't understand what's going on. We've tried and we've done everything that God told us to do, and it seems like it's just not working. No one's around to encourage us, no cheerleaders. It's in those seasons, in those darkest hours. I'm here today to tell you, you got to trust Him when you can't trace Him. You got to hold on, because what's for you will be yours. You'll make it. Now listen.
There are days that I don't think I can make it. Some head and heartaches, just don't think I can shake it. But God, He knows just how much I can bear, and never will He leave me in despair. It may be hard right now, but some way, somehow, God will work it out. That's when I'll make it. It's hard right now, but some way, somehow, God will work it out. That's when I'll make. Oh yes, I will.
Sam, now you tell them about it.
There have been times that I had rather given up on life.
Tell the story, man.
My brightest time of the day seemed to be at midnight. There's many times that I felt, oh my, and right now I feel so alone. But I know that God will never leave me on my own. It may be hard right now, but some way, somehow, God will work it out. That's when I'll make it. I know without a shadow of a doubt that it's hard, but some way, somehow, God will work it out, and that's when I'll make it. It may be hard right now, but some way, somehow, God will work it out, and that's when I'll make it. I know it's hard right now. Right now, but some way, oh, I'll make it. Oh, yes, I will. Oh, yeah. Maybe going through the storm right now, but sooner or later, oh, yeah. After the storm is over, after the smoke clears, that's when I'll be near to making it. In the Lord's time, everything is gonna work out fine. Oh yes, it will. Oh, won't have to cry no more. God's gonna give you double for your trouble. Yes, He will. Want somebody to know it's gonna be greater later. Yes, it will.
Little brother, I'm glad you told them. You know, we've just come through the most difficult season in our lives. And one thing I've learned about God is that He's everything He ever promised He would be. And I want to say to you today, it's not so much of what you're going through. My brother, my sister, it's about what you're going to. You're gonna make it. It's gonna be all right. Hello, family. This is your pastor, R.C. Blakes Jr. And I am thrilled today to be able to share with you. And I tell you what, I have a word that I must share with you today. I'd love for you, if you would help me, just invite some people to come in and to be a part of this Bible study today. Invite them to come in and to be a part of what we have going on today, because I know that it's going to absolutely change lives. I was thinking about something today. Actually, I was thinking about something this morning as I woke up. I was thinking about how I believe the true measuring rod of, and I want you to hear this because this is going to help you. The true measuring rod of spiritual growth or spiritual maturity is the perspective we maintain on problems. Yeah, it's how a person looks at it's how a person looks at problems that I believe determines where they really are on the spiritual maturity scale. It's not so much your charisma, your spiritual theatrics and dynamics and all of the stuff we carry on in the local assembly, but I think it boils down to how does a person look at problems? Because what we call problems is the very purpose of the thing we call faith. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. And what does faith do for us? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So what faith does is faith cooperates with our hope. And when one is walking in true faith, and when one is growing spiritually and one is maturing spiritually, that individual's faith is expanding. And when that person's faith expands, their perspective on problems is different. Have you ever been in a situation where maybe there was a challenge, or maybe there is a challenge, and your faith says, I don't know how, but everything gonna be all right. All things are working together for good. And I mean, you really feel that in your spirit, though it seems like it's a problem, though it looks like it's a challenge. Your faith says, it is well with my soul. And then you're around somebody who's been in church longer than you, or somebody that's older than you, or somebody that's supposed to be spiritually mature, and they're looking at the problem as though it is, the end of the world. My friend, Pastor YPJ, says, COVID is not king. Jesus is king. But how many believers we have, though this thing is very problematic. Nobody knows that any more than I do after having buried so many of our church members. I mean, it has been an unreal season. But COVID is not king. Jesus is king. And though it seems challenging and though it seems problematic, I know that it's not the end of the world. That somehow, some way, God is going to even use this to bring glory to himself and to increase you and I. And so when I'm around people who just throw their hands up and, they're just inviting a nervous breakdown into their world, those kinds of people trouble me. I don't really care to spend too much time with people who don't have a proper perspective on problems. And why is that? It's because man that is born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. In other words, in this natural life, in this natural world, we're going to always have what appears to be problems. But when you step out of, your carnality and you step into the Spirit, you step into faith, you begin to see the problems, or begin, should I say, to look through the problems, and you're searching for the opportunities, because wherever there are problems, there are opportunities. And, depending on what your perspective is, are you just looking at the surface level condition presently, or are you looking through this, and are you looking, for the opportunity that God has hidden in this thing? Depending on what your perspective is, determines how you come out of this. Like when Hurricane Katrina came through New Orleans and flooded out the whole city and destroyed the whole city for the most part, most of the indigenous people did not see the opportunity. Our properties were going for pennies on the dollar. And because all we could see is, oh, I lost this and I lost that and we lost this, and we sold our property for those of us that owned something. And for those of us that were renters who could now afford to go and buy the properties that we could, previously not afford, we didn't even take advantage of the sale, because we were so busy looking at the problems, we didn't see the opportunities. And so now we have people from all over the country and the world that are living in New Orleans who bought our properties for pennies on the dollar, invested a few dollars in it, and made it livable again. And now the properties that were once worth $60,000 are now selling for $450 million. Because wherever there's a so-called problem, there are opportunities. It's all in your perspective. So that's really what I want to talk about: problems or opportunities. Based on your perspective, is this a problem you're dealing with, or is this really an opportunity? You know what I'm saying? Like, some of you have some ridiculous so-called relationships where somebody's threatening to walk out on you, and you're begging them to stay because you think it's problematic that this person is leaving. Is this really a problem, or is this an opportunity for you to finally let me leave that alone? But, I love art. I love paintings and what have you, and my house is filled with it. I have so much that some of it is actually sitting on the floor. And when you look at abstract art, it's all about, your perspective. A person can look at abstract art, and one person can see one thing, another person can see another. And abstract art reminds me of something we call problems, in the human experience. Just like abstract art, what is perceived as a problem to one man is seen as an opportunity to another. If you go to Proverbs 23:7, if you see me looking down, it's because my notes are here but beneath me. In Proverbs 23:7, it says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." Now, that's a very deep text when you begin to look at it from a psychological perspective even. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I believe that has a lot to do with the fact that what we really believe in our subconscious mind, we create in our three-dimensional world. So if I sit here and if in my subconscious mind I view something, I view an activity of a person as rejection of me, abandonment of me, disrespect of me, if I view that in my mind and if I hold that image in my mind, I will create that in my three-dimensional world. Somebody's going to leave me. Somebody, I'll hold that thought, because we are creative beings. And so there are many days that you're looking at something, and because you perceive it, because you think in your heart that it is a problem, it becomes a problem because you are the greatest prophet of your own life. So all of life is based on perception. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. All of life is based on perception. It is what you think it is. It is what you think it is. A situation becomes a problem when you view it as such. Interesting thing. I nearly had, if I did not have, a nervous breakdown as a pastor when Hurricane Katrina, washed through the city of New Orleans. You fast forward that thing a decade and however many years later, 15 years later or so, COVID-19 hits, shuts down everything. And the same guy that nearly had a nervous breakdown during Katrina, I just pivoted because I refused to view this as something that was for my demise. I refused to view this as something that would destroy the ministry. And here we are 2 years later. And because my perception was not that of a problem, but probably an opportunity, come on now. For me and people like me, preachers and pastors like me, this has been the most opportunistic season of our ministries to reach the world. Come on now. I believe, I said the other day, and I believe it with all of my heart, when things are said and done, I believe more souls will have been saved during COVID-19 than we've seen in probably centuries, in the United States of America especially. It's because the ears of people have been tuned and they want to hear what thus saith the Lord. But if I'm sitting here as a man of God and I'm viewing this as a problem and I'm getting depressed and I'm sitting in a pity party, the word that God put in my mouth for those who are hungry for it would never be delivered. And it wouldn't be delivered because of what? My perception. Ralph Waldo Emerson said 150 years ago that the measure of mental health is the demeanor to find good in every situation. That I'm not going to look at anything as, a problem that comes to destroy me. It may be a challenge, but when it's all said and done, I'm coming out on top and going higher. Because there's a very thin line between what is a problem and what is an opportunity. Now speaking of ministry, during these 2 years, we've taken in members from all over the nation. People have joined the cyber church community. We're getting ready to Lisa and I are getting ready to actually launch a cyber church platform that's been in the making for the 2 years or so. Now we're getting ready to launch it to really create a community for all of our cyber church members that feel connected to my voice as a pastor. New Home Family Worship Center has grown during this pandemic. The members of New Home Family Worship Center have continued to support the ministry. People from all over the nation are supporting the ministry. So what was presented as catastrophe, something that looked like it might destroy the ministry, this very thing has expanded our footprint nationally and internationally. Now let's get some definition here. Problem defined. A problem is a potentially negative issue requiring a certain response to produce a positive outcome. An opportunity defined is an opportunity is a positive possibility requiring a certain response to take advantage. Let me read it again. Problem defined is a potentially negative issue requiring a certain response to produce a positive outcome. Opportunity is a positive possibility requiring a certain response to take advantage. So there are a lot of days that we're looking at things and they look like problems, but they're really opportunities waiting on us to respond properly that we might take advantage. You will never be without an opportunity to view something as a problem. Life is a series of issues from the cradle to the grave. If you go to Job 14:1, I kind of mentioned this, but here's the text, book, chapter, and verse. Job 14:1 says, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. So in this text, God's servant Job expresses through his own personal experiences that life is short-lived and filled with problems. You will never get rid of problems until you die. But now watch this. Some of you say, I'm tired of all of these problems. I'm tired of all of these problems. The alternative to problems is death. You will have no more problems when you die. You know, as a pastor, I have problematic members, and I love all of my members. Let's be clear. I love every one of them. But I have some that are just problems. They're never satisfied. They're messy. They're gossipers. They're always starting fires. They're creating situations where there shouldn't even be an issue. You know what I mean? But now, since I've been away from them for 2 years and haven't been able to hug them and see them and rebuke them and all of that, man, I long to see my little members, even the little messy ones, even the little childish ones. I long to see them. But back to my point, the alternative to problems is death. Success in life is all about turning problems into opportunities. So now I hear you talking about the situation you're in and what you're dealing with. But my question to you is, my grown man, grown woman question to you is, what are you doing to turn your problem into an opportunity? I don't want to hear about all because everybody got issues. Everybody got something they're dealing with, man. I know you sit and you look and you imagine that my life is just a flowery bed of ease. Man, if I let you walk with me for 24 or 48 hours, give you 2 days of it, you would pray for me the rest of your days. Because all of us have what? Issues. How you define problematic situations will greatly determine the quality of your life, especially your emotional life. It will determine the significance of your contributions, and it will also determine the legacy you leave to your children, the way you manage problems. The thing I love so much about my late father, Bishop Robert Charles Blake Sr., was that it didn't matter what Dad was dealing with, he always had a positive perspective on it. He could be lying in a hospital bed and the doctor could have told him, you know, you don't have long to live, and that happened a few times. And you walk in that room and you say, Dad, how you doing? Man, I'm kicking. I'm on top, man. Man, I'm zooming in here. I've never done better. And because of his positive outlook, look at the contributions this man has made. If my brother and I together do half as much as my father did as an individual, we will go down in history as great men. And it's going to be hard to do half as much as my father did. I'm not even trying to compete with that. But because he had a positive outlook on situations and problems, his contributions were immense. The legacy he's left to his children, to his spiritual and even his biological children is amazing. What you actually believe about problems will affect the way you respond to them. So lift your spirit up and stop walking around here just dragging and everything, talking about how hard it is. Man, come on now. Stop wishing life to be easier, one man said. And pray for God to make you stronger. Because life doesn't get easier, but you can get stronger. If you go to James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, That was Zig Ziglar that said that, actually, I think it was. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, but let patience have her perfect work, that she may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Now, there are two things you can do when faced with problems. That's either respond or react. And these two words, react and respond, are synonymous to an extent. To a certain extent, respond and react are synonymous. And we might use them interchangeably at times. However, in terms of what they suggest, they are different. To respond denotes a calculated and prepared comeback. To react carries the mental picture of shooting in the dark and hoping for the best. Most of us react to problems rather than respond. Reactions are usually emotional and unproductive. Responses are cerebral and solutionary. So when COVID-19 hit and they said, okay, this thing is ravaging the land, and this thing is spreading and it's very contagious, my brother and I called one another and we got together and we said, let's pray about what to do. And I don't think it was 24 hours. We said, well, we're going to shut the ministry down in terms of physical worship. And because we prayed and we responded and we didn't just react, God gave us strategy. Okay, now how are you going to manage this? Okay, well, we're going to all go to social media, all of the pastors, and we're going to have a solid block of 4 hours where we're one behind the other. When the time is appropriate, we're going to go to drive-up services. Come on, somebody. What are you going to do? Well, since we can't have church in the physical sense of the gathering, we're going to do ministry in our community. We're going to feed and we're going to clothe. And man, we fed tens of thousands of people during this pandemic. And it was because we didn't look at it and start biting our nails, but we actually had a response rather than a reaction. And because we had the response, the members of the ministry maintained the positive, upbeat spirit about everything that we're dealing with. Now, let me read this little story for you. Two executives headed for major meetings in New York City were held over in Atlanta because of weather conditions. One exec perceived the situation to be a major and unconquerable roadblock to his progress. He reacted by allowing his blood pressure to rise, his attitude to sink, his optimism to dissipate, and his creativity to stall. Across the aisle, the other executive heard the same announcement that he was stuck and he would be laid over, but responded differently. He immediately called New York and informed them of the delay. He continued to read and send emails. He delegated certain responsibilities by way of his cell phone. He put the finishing touches on certain presentations that had been incomplete. Finally, he finished reading a book that had been in his briefcase. By the time the announcer said that it was time to board, the first exec had a headache and a backed up workload. The other executive was 2 weeks ahead of schedule and feeling great about life. One reacted to the situation while the other responded. Now, let me ask you, do you react or do you respond to problems? Any given situation in life is what you perceive it to be. So now let's look at this. Can you believe all of that was introduction? A different perspective on problems. Problems, number one, if you're writing, taking notes, Problems, this is just a different perspective on problems, how you define it. Problems are lessons begging to be learned. Problems are lessons begging to be learned. The process of educating involves information and examination. The teacher, the instructor, puts forth a series of problems, challenges, for the purpose of pinpointing exactly where the student is. So the teacher will say, okay, let me throw this out at you. Let me give you a little pop-up quiz. And the pop-up quiz is really a series of maybe 10 problems that you need to solve. And then he or she collects it and they say to you, okay, well, this is not even going to go towards your grade. Don't worry about it. And the purpose of giving you the problems was to pinpoint exactly where you are so that the instructor would know exactly how to teach you and what you need to learn as an individual student as much as a collective class. For every new level, there are new exams or new problems or new challenges. You know, like we see people that we admire and we say, oh, I wish I could be them. You know, like I used to sit behind my father and I used to say, oh man, I can't wait until I can walk in dad's shoes and do what dad is doing. Now I'm in those shoes and I got corns on every toe, if y'all know what I mean. Come on now, because for every new level, there's a new exam. There are new problems to solve. There are new challenges to conquer. If you keep getting the same test, it means you haven't learned the lessons yet. Is this resonating with anybody? If I'm not preaching to anybody else, I'm preaching to myself right now. And I delivered this message for the first time, because I'm working off of paper here, August 3rd, 2003. That's going on, that's 19 years ago almost. And this message still resonates. If you look in Psalms 119 and 71, it says, it is good for me. Remember, point number one, problems are lessons begging to be learned. Psalms 119:71 says, it is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. So take a lesson from everything you go through in life. That's the purpose of you going through it. God's not trying to kill you, he's trying to strengthen you. A person is not wise because of what they've gone through. They are wise because of what they learned from their experiences. You're not wise because you're old. You're not wise because you got gray hair. You know, this doesn't make me wise. You look up under there, you can see them roots, those roots. That doesn't make me wise. I know so many gray-haired fools, gray-bearded fools who've gone through it and never learned anything from it. Problems are lessons begging to be learned. Problems must be viewed as personal and purposeful. Now, one major error many students make is to allow other people to take your exams. The only way you become efficient is to fail and pass your own exams. We make a horrible mistake as parents when we bail our children out of all of their problems. Because if they never take the exam, they will never graduate. Never allow anyone to handle all of your problems. When you allow other people to face all of your challenges, you develop learned helplessness. Again, parents often make this mistake, putting our children in position where we handle all of their problems and they learn helplessness. Well, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time today. That was part one, really just the introduction to this lesson. We are going to go back into this next time, and I'm going to bring you into part 2, where we're going to just outline, really redefine what problems, really are. And I think when we look at this, it's going to be like a light bulb moment for you, where you're going to be, wow, man, I really do have, this is really not a problem. This is truly an opportunity. So I want you to make certain that you are here to be with us in our next Bible study, because it's going to be amazing. Now listen, you're there and you're saying, well, Pastor, I need to give my heart to the Lord Jesus Christ, or I want to join New Home Family Worship Center, or I want to be a part of the Cyber Church community. There's an email address at the bottom of the screen. I want you to email us and just let us know exactly what your need is, and someone's going to respond to you, and someone's going to get you situated. And I'd love nothing more than to be able to welcome you into the family of God and to welcome you into the New Home family. Now, today, as we prepare to return the Lord's tithe, has God been good to you? Has God been good to you? I've been really talking to New Home Family Worship Center, those of you who have really fallen off the wagon relative to tithing since this pandemic. It's unbelievable to me that God can be so good to you and you not honor God with a dime out of a dollar. I know everybody makes a big deal about the tithe and should we tithe, but the reality is a tithe is a dime out of a dollar. Every dollar that God blesses you with, God says, bring to the house a dime out of every dollar. That's what a tithe is. So if God has blessed you with this much, God says, bring me that and leave that in the house where you're fed spiritually. That's the tithe. This here's the tithe. And we're sitting in barbershops and in beauty shops, and we're arguing about, should we bring God this? And God woke you up this morning. God made provision for you to be able to earn a living for yourself. God is the reason you're in your right mind. And you mean to tell me you're going to sit there and you're going to rob God of that? And God is not going to force it out of you. Malachi is God calling you into a covenant. He says, bring me the tithe and I'm going to open for you the windows of heaven, pour out a blessing that you won't have room enough to receive. I'm going to rebuke the devourer, meaning what? If you don't come into this covenant, you leave yourself wide open to whatever the devil wants to do in your life. So when the Bible says in Malachi about there being a curse, it's not God doing anything adverse to you. It's God simply not having the right to step in and to prevent certain things because you're not in what covenant with God over this. So I want you to get the Lord's tithe, and I want you to utilize one of the apps that's on the screen, and I want you to return the Lord's tithe. Now, this is what I would ask you to do today. This is what I'm asking you to do today. I want you to get that Job 42 seed. We talked about Job. I want you to get that Job 42 seed, that seed of restoration. Do you need to see some things restored in your life? Get that $42 seed. And there's some of you who've never given. You say, oh, I don't feel like figuring out these apps and all that. Figure it out. Figure it out today, because there are times that God is releasing a grace. And you, my friend, you need to be partaker in this grace. I want you to get that $42 seed. Some of you say, well, I want to sow at a higher level. Sow 142. Look at all of the apps. Look at the mailing addresses. Mail it. Use the apps. But I want you to participate in this time of giving today. I want you to get that $42 seed of restoration. And my prayer for you is that everything broken, God is repairing. Everything missing, God is replacing. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. As you obey the voice of God, if you can hear the Holy Spirit speaking to you through me today, and if you obey the voice of God, the thing that you purpose that seed to accomplish, you will see that thing manifest before your very eyes. So get the Lord's tithe and get this $42 restoration seed And I mean do it now. I'm looking for you all to do this in great numbers. Let me see your name. When I look at the report, let me see your name. New Home Family Worship Center. Let me see your name. Have you given up on the Lord? What is going on here? Don't have people loving the Lord and loving your ministry from all over the nation, and you're sitting there. So I love you. I love you with all of my heart. And I say to you, you're on top and you're going higher. God has more in store for you. So I will see you at the top.
And the word of the Lord is blessed. Can we just thank God for that word from our Bishop, R.C. Blakes Jr. Listen, family, now is the time to sow a good seed into the man of God's life. We can do that by sowing into his Cash App. As a matter of fact, you can take out your phones and scan that QR code. But if not, you can put in $ ROBERTBLAKESJR. You can also sow into his Venmo, his personal website, or on the Givelify app at New Home Ministries Temple. Family, let's sow a seed into the man of God's life. Do it now.